Hello guys, how are you? The createObject is here. In this video we're going to see configuration of classes in eFramework. So I'm going to create now a new component. Let me create components folder and let's create a timeline component. And I'm going to extend it from the component. Now let me add a couple of properties right here, like number of events. Okay, so how many events to show at a time, just as an examples. And I will one more add property like visibility, okay, to be internal. Okay, just example. Okay, and let's go to the site controller, and I want to create an instance of this class timeline component. Okay, so one way obviously is to create an instance with a new keyword, new timeline component, and we have it. The second way is to use createObject static method. And the createObject basically accepts an array, and the array has the following syntax. So it needs to have class property, and in this case we need to specify timeline component colon class or class name, but the class name is deprecated, so I use class. And we can also specify here the class's fully qualified name as a string. Basically we can point here the attributes of the class, like I declared here number of events and visibility. So let me copy these two attributes and put it right here without $, of course. And let's just put something here. Number of events is 20 and the visibility is public. Okay, and additionally we can specify here more things like on space and the event name. So when some event happens on add new event inside, when a new event is basically added in the timeline, this function will be called. This add new event is the given name, so you can name your event whatever you want, and as soon as this event is triggered from somewhere else, this function will be called. And we can also specify behaviors as space and the behavior name. We haven't actually talked about behaviors, so I'm not going to I'm not going to spend time on behaviors right now. Okay, there will be a separate video for this. But you can specify like behavior name just as an information, and you specify here the class behavior class right here. Okay, so let's create an object. Let me call it timeline, and we can dump this timeline and see on the page. Here it is, app components timeline, which has number of events 20 and the visibility is public. Okay, if we don't pass visibility here, the visibility will be internal, but number of events will be given and overridden to the default value. Okay, so if you have already created a component like timeline is new timeline component, and you just want to configure it with the array, you can skip this class in this array and change the createObject into configure. So I want to configure timeline with the given array, and it basically doesn't return anything and we don't want it. Okay, so and the visibility, let's return it to public, and let's dump the timeline, and the output is the same. So we have the timeline component instance, which has number of event and it has visibility also. This configuration approach is heavily used in the framework. If we have a look at the index.php, which is the entry script, here the application instance is created and it accepts an array. And let's have a look at the config file. So we have here an array, keys and values. It has aliases, it has its own components, and each component basically is a configuration object. So like the cache component, it has class here, and this is the only key right now in this array. But whatever properties the file cache class has, like key prefix for example, this can be added right here, key prefix something. Mailer, for example, it has class yii2 mailer class, and it we additionally passed here property of this mailer class, use file transport true. And if we get back to the entry script here, the configuration array is passed to the application, and it's not created right here using createObject, because it's just given to the application, and inside application somewhere in the init, in the base application, in the init or in the constructor method, it just configures this. Okay, so component construct with config array, and here it calls configure on this object with the config array. So if we get back to the site controller where I created this timeline object, and if I just remove this number of events property from this, so it's obviously 10, but let's say that I want to configure the number of events globally, so that whenever an instance of this class is created, it should be like 15, for example. So this can be done using container default values. So let's go to the config file, and here I'm going to specify container and definitions. The container is basically an associative array, and definitions, and I'm going to specify here the class name basically, which in our case is app components timeline component, and its associative array, basically keys and values of the default properties. Okay, default values. Like I'm going to specify here, well, let's follow this class, number of events. So the number of events is 15. And let's see in the browser. It's still 10. I think we need to, call create. So this basically only works when you create an object, not when you are configuring existing object. Okay, so we need to call here createObject again, where the class is timeline component class. And okay, let's see the result. Okay, and here we see 15. So basically, using the container, we can set the default values different from the default value of which is written in the class. Okay, so the default value written in the class is 10, but in the container we can override this, and we can even do this at a different stage. Okay, so here, before I create an object, I can call container set, and I need to specify here the class name. Basically, this will be timeline component class, and pass here an associative array, like number of events is 25. It can be even string 25. Okay, and let's see the result. It's string 25. So as I said, this configuration is heavily used in framework, and it's really handy in some cases. So I will use also later in my videos, in my project, so you are now aware how it works. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next time.